Okay, so let's do this. As we begin, I'm going to invite you just to gently close your eyes and just bring just a gentle awareness to the crown chakra. And gently noticing, am I open? Am I relaxed? Am I receptive? And so we're just breathing in and breathing out and feeling the center of the crown chakra. And I invite you just to gently envision a bowl on top of the crown, just receiving light from above. And as you breathe in and breathe out, you may just notice like a feeling of like tingling light on the top of the head and just feeling what's here. You may feel a sense of the absolute reality, Shiva nature. And again, we're just breathing and feeling and opening. And so I'm going to encourage you just to continue to breathe and feel in this way while I move forward with the teaching this week. And so, as promised, I said I would be taking us through the 7 chakra centers, one each week, and go into greater detail of that particular center and how it interacts with Kundalini. So I wrote myself some notes because I wanted to make sure I did not forget anything. Normally I don't do notes, I just speak from experience, but I want to make sure I cover all the bases here. So the crown chakra is the doorway to heaven, the doorway to the absolute, the doorway to being receptive to grace, the doorway, to the realm of Shiva, which of course is the realm of the absolute, the realms of emptiness and just vast freedom. It can also be the doorway to communication with different angelic beings or astral masters, gods, goddesses, this type of thing. It's a doorway to the astral plane in general. Above the crown chakra, like we think that there's 7 chakras, and that's true. There's 7 housed in the body. There's many more other smaller chakras, but we won't get into that in this moment. Above the crown, there's 3 other chakras, right above the head, within the first, say, 3 feet. And then beyond those, I want you to imagine like 1,000 smaller chakras, almost stacked on top of each other, reaching all the way into the heavens. And again, we won't speak too much about those realms. In the most healthy sense, when the crown is opened, you feel connected to God, connected to grace. You don't feel like you're alone in the world. You feel like not only are you supported by God, but you are the very fabric of God. You can feel that it's like a felt paradox. It can feel very personal and simultaneously non-dual as well. When the crown chakra is open and we're healthy, we have a happy, healthy relationship with God, with life, with the universe. And again, it just feels wondrous. Now, for most people, this isn't the case, and I'll just go into a little bit of detail why this isn't the case. Most people had difficult childhoods, had parents who were less than perfect. And when we have this type of experience, as kids, we see mom and dad literally as manifestations of God. And if mom and dad weren't good to us, there's a good chance as we become adults or we ponder the question of God, we have this projected thought that, God is a cruel God, or there's no such thing as God, or God doesn't really care about me or love me or support me. And again, normally that comes from, in a sense, a cycle of abuse from bad parenting. And so it's important to make that distinction and not to close off to God or the great masters or, all this heavenly support and grace because mom and dad were harmful to you. It makes sense, like we can understand why that might happen, but you don't want to punish yourself because and by ending prematurely your relationship with God because mom and dad were mean. In fact, if mom and dad were difficult or they didn't know how to be parents, you need God the Father and God the Mother more fully in your life. And so you want to more fully open if you had difficult parents. I mean, either way, it's important to more fully open to God's grace. So I'll just continue a little bit here. So the doorway for this healing to occur is through trust. And the spiritual practice, is often meditation, just silent seated meditation. But it can also be through prayer, through contemplation. And, in meditation, often we open to God in a very non-personal way, like in an absolute type of way. But in prayer, we bring forth our humanity. And so through a humble relationship with God and admitting just, this kind of fact of life that, hey, God, here I am and I feel all alone. Will you come into me? Will you hold me? Will you support me? Will you give the strength to me and will you speak through me and act through me, live through me and love through me? And, so through the doorway of humility, we really open the crown chakra. Sometimes people try to open the crown chakra through chanting mantras or, this type of thing. And, sometimes that works, but really the crown opens through humility because there's a sense of, I'm a human being and I'm kind of lost in the world and I want to connect to that which is greater. And immediately there's an acknowledgement of one's human limitations and divine and God's unlimitedness, God's, ever-presentness, God's, all-powerfulness, God's unconditional love. And so we're opening to those and asking for support. And anyone who gets a little too Buddhist and tries to just do the path alone, for me, I feel like why? Like why do that to try to do it alone? It's kind of like, you want to be an Olympic athlete and you can try to do all your training on your own, or you can have a coach. To me, like God's the coach, God's the support, God is the team. And so, while we're going to run our race alone, our team's going to be at our side. God can be at our side. And so I'm a big fan ever since I was a child of opening to grace, opening to support, and like a good Buddhist, having, good, strong, present discipline. I know who I am, what my life's about. And of course, both are necessary. Both are necessary. So let's talk about some of the difficulties when the crown chakra opens. So the things that I run into most with people is when the Kundalini starts to open the crown chakra, or the crown is open through meditation, or as people become quite ungrounded. And so, the invitation is do anything and everything you can to ground. Whether it's walking, running, a yoga practice, meditating down, deep in the belly, reconnecting with the body, including the body, all these types of things. Eating heavier foods like potatoes and carrots, working in the garden can be healing. Now, beyond, the first thing that most everyone experiences when they open the crown, of feeling ungrounded, some people, like when the crown chakra is beginning to open, they may feel pressure, they may feel heat, they may feel headaches. And this can be quite uncomfortable. When any of the centers open, if there's a lot of karma or there's a lot of veiling of the chakra center, and the Kundalini is waking up in that center, there's a lot of light that's needed to kind of burn off the karma, to burn through the veil, to clear the veil. And that can be uncomfortable. So when the crown first opens, again, there can be a lot of heat, a lot of headaches. Some people, myself experience migraines, um, a lot of tension in the head, top of the head, can even kind of come down to the back of the skull or the forehead. Um, so it can be difficult. Another experience when the Kundalini is really waking up in the crown. Sometimes there can be the feeling almost like it's like acid rain is happening within the brain, within the consciousness. You know, the great teacher Adyashanti and I, we were speaking once, we were kind of laughing about how intense it was when the crown and the third eye opened and that feeling of acid rain. Really painful and difficult. Not everyone goes through it, but again, I'm just kind of acknowledging. Of course, I'll just say this one caveat about each chakra center. As they open, they blend into the others. So the crown blends into the third eye, which will blend into the throat. And so we can discern them individually, but often they'll open, almost simultaneously, or like when the third eye is really open, then the crown begins to open, or vice versa. And anyways. Another danger in the crown chakra opening is when we do it through drug use, especially psychedelics, marijuana, cannabis. Some people have opened the crown through, just doing party drugs, ecstasy, MDMA. Of course, those are also kind of in the realm of psychedelics. But party drugs like cocaine or even, meth, where people can get into like a drug-induced psychosis mixed with their crown chakra opening. Ayahuasca is a very common one, again in the psychedelic realm, where the crown can be opened or pushed open prematurely and creating great confusion. I've met with a lot of people who have their crown just blasted open through psychedelics, and then they feel like they have all these astral beings coming into them, preying on them, and all this kind of thing. And, opening up the darker realms or like almost like hell realms. Uh, and that does happen more often than not. I'll say in 10% of the time, the individual, 10% of the casualties, it is truly that they've opened to the lower realms through the crown, because the crown opens you to the astral plane, and we can open to the lower realms. So 10% of the time, the individuals did open to a hell realm. Now, 90% of the time, the people that come to me and they claim they're being preyed upon by entities and this and that type of thing, and these hellish figures, normally it's psychological material. And so really, like if someone had an abusive father or mother, or they were like sexually abused and this type of thing, normally it's the psyche and the unconscious that's kind of coming forward and releasing and expressing itself in darker visions, but it's coming forward to be healed. It's not an actual entity preying on the individual. And normally that takes a lot of work to be able to discern the difference and to do the healing work around it. Either way, it's helpful to have support in those arenas. But right now it's really popular to have entities preying on you, for some reason. Just like 10 years ago, it was real popular to have IBS. Like everyone had IBS or Candida or however you say that. Sometimes there's these waves of popularity, and like another popular one now is like everyone's so traumatized that we can't go outside. Like we're traumatized to have to go back to work, after COVID ends. And that's not trauma, that's just called life. It's like you just got to go back to life. Of course, in a compassionate way, all of us have been pretty beaten down by life, and that is trauma. So anyways, I don't want to get off track here. So, the other thing that happens is sometimes with drug use, the Kundalini can be what's called a top-down awakening. And I don't want to go too much into that, but, in theory, Kundalini wakes up in the base of the spine, goes up through all 7 chakra centers, comes into heaven and discovers divine union, and then comes back down again through all 7 chakra centers. And like right now, within my own consciousness, this experience is just coming like waves. Energy is going up and coming down simultaneously. And in a sense, it doesn't feel like much distinction. In the beginning, there could be a radical distinction of lots of energy coming up or lots of energy coming down. People who have bottom up or top down Kundalini awakenings both complain about how difficult the experience can be if it's really intense. When it's top down, we can feel just really ungrounded. We can feel disassociated and have derealization, where you're looking out at life and nothing seems real. You can feel really disconnected from your heart and your body. And again, all these things require support. And these are kind of like the tragic cases. So I just want to clarify that. Let me see. I know I just want to speak for a couple more minutes here before we get to the sharing. So in theory, when the Kundalini is cutting through, like I said before, it can be quite unpleasant as the Kundalini is shedding the karma and shedding the veils. But it's important to trust during that time period, to trust that we're opening to something greater, we're opening to support, to love. In the same way, if I go and get a deep tissue massage, I'm going to lay down on the table. It's going to be really uncomfortable as the therapist digs into my back or neck or, hamstrings or whatever. It's going to be very unpleasant. But afterwards, I'm going to feel more open and relaxed and peaceful when I have more mobility in my body. The same is true with, anytime Kundalini is working on a center and cutting through the layers of karma. Be very unpleasant. But when you trust, then it's just an unpleasant, uncomfortable experience. When you don't trust, when you resist the opening, you're just prolonging the process and you're creating more pain for yourself. If I'm sure some of the people in the audience are vaccine people, and so if you get a vaccine, like if you just think about it the whole time, that needle coming into your arm and how bad it's going to hurt, you're prolonging suffering. Whereas you just go in the doctor's office, get the shot, go home and get some rest, take care of the body, then not so big a deal. Not so big a deal, as long as there's not complications from the vaccine. But you guys get the idea with the metaphor. Resistance prolongs the experience of difficulty. Whereas when the crown is open in a healthy way, if we're trusting, we're cooperating with God, we're co-creating with God. We're saying, I'm a child of God, and I'm open to receiving support and love from God. Okay. Another kind of traumatic thing that can happen is sometimes when we open, we get overwhelmed with, if we open to the astral planes, which sometimes happens, sometimes not. But if we start doing business with the astral planes and the psychic planes and getting confused by cities and these type of things, which I normally don't recommend, I recommend just opening directly to Shiva consciousness, opening to Christ consciousness, opening to the grace of God, to love, to more absolute realms, and not playing around with the astral planes. When we do play around with the astral planes, sometimes we can get really confused. We're like, oh, I see the number 1111 and that means something. And I need to go play the lottery now and do 1111 on all my lottery tickets. Or we see some synchronicity and we think it means we're supposed to go buy a new car and, we go spend a lot of money. Or, we start being, psychically just weird, having dreams of, unconscious tragedy, but it's really just our unconsciousness releasing something, but thinking that it has to do with the end of the world coming and this type of thing. Talking to, people who aren't there and, drifting into realms of psychosis and this type of thing because we don't know what's psychic, what's psychosis, what's real, what's imagined. Things can get really nutty. A lot of people who open this too quickly or who it just opens very quickly through drugs or through Kundalini sometimes can fall prey into having like a messiah complex where they think that they're the next savior. And I've had to talk a lot of people down from being, hey, I'm the messiah. Okay, I'm going to leave. So, there could be that type of thing. All right. The main thing is, of course, opening the crown is helpful, but because you receive greater support and all this upgrades of consciousness and opening to, the million and one realms of divinity, of love and light and support and grace and compassion and truth and emptiness. But it's important also to have both feet on planet Earth while this is opening, so we don't, fall into the normal things that occur, which are disassociation, is a real common one. Sometimes we can feel a little bit derealized or be a little bit spiritually aloof, seeing the world as all an illusion. So it's important to have your feet on the ground, and we don't quit our job immediately and think we're the next Messiah. So I hope that teaching was helpful. Next week, we'll speak about the third eye.